Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of MTG Sin Senpai. So this is another one of the drafts that I've done with a couple of my friends. It was his birthday the day before mine, funny enough, and so I decided to draft with him. It was a small four-man draft, so it wasn't too many of us. But after discussing with him, I'm kind of going to go into more details of my picks whenever it comes to my drafts. But I know apparently there's a little bit more, at least the way my approach to draft is a little bit different than most. So I'm deciding to, after discussing with them, I'm like, you know what, I'll kind of go into details about reasons why I made picks that I did and kind of go forward from there. Once again, the setup is these are the cards that I picked that I did not run. These are the cards that I picked that I did run. So let's kind of go forward from there. I know a lot of these cards, and at least in the blue, I know these two are pretty nifty battle tricks, so it's definitely a strong card to kind of run. It's a nifty way to essentially one-for-one an opponent's creature in comparison to yours and draw a card, so it's a neat cantrip. That's a pretty solid black creature. This particular one wasn't the best pick. I just happened to grab just because it was just there, value creature in blue, because I thought I was going to go blue. Then we got ourselves Negate. Negate is just a strong card, period. So both a hate pick and because I might have been going blue, I went with this. The Tide Pool Turtle was not the strongest pull, but it's a decent body for 4 mana that can also scry, so it's a mana dump into the late game. This particular creature is just a value, period. Having a 5 mana 4/4, yeah, it's not the strongest stat-wise, but its effect, stunning an opponent's creature, is pretty absurd. Tempo-wise, this does out-tempo your opponent's creatures for a couple turns, and it's a decent body for 5 mana. This is a pretty decent value black creature, flying, so it's got the evasion, and the 2 mana +1/+1 ability is not something to laugh at, especially in the late game. It's definitely a mana dump. This particular card was actually, it's not the worst card. I got it in more in the late picks. In the worst case scenario, if you're just running 2 colors, it's 3 mana, draw 2, lose 2, so it's really not the worst. And then if you're going into the full 5-color domain, it does at least give you some options and can kind of fill up your graveyard, so not the worst option there. And then this particular card was actually, funny enough, a last pick. One of my opponents passed this to me, but it's not the strongest creature. This one I did not pick of my own choice. It just happens to be one of those last picks. And then tokens, so nothing too crazy there. But I'll be straight up, I do not like this particular creature that much. I mean, if you're in blue and you have the domain so you can kind of dig in, it's okay, but I personally don't like it that much. And then here's the actual deck that I ran. I went primarily white, and I did go 5-color, and I went a little bit crazy. But so this card is a insane recursion card that straight up is just 1 mana, get a creature back, gain 2 life. For 1 mana, that's just insane. And if you can kick it as well, it's 2 mana, or 2 creatures for 3 mana. Or actually, it's 1 creature and another permanent card from your graveyard. So it's actually pretty nuts. I like this particular card a lot in draft. Very strong. The white card, this is just solid removal. If nothing else, there's always a creature that gets to toughness at least 4. So this just straight up kills it. And worst case scenario, if there's a problematic enchantment, blow it up. At instant speed is a solid card. This particular one I decided to run because I was already in the 5-color domain. It's not the strongest white card, but especially the fact that you only can hit creatures that are tapped with this. But it is an instant speed battle trick that's not the worst, and I did need a little bit more removal. This particular Lurgoyf, or Goyf, Urborg Lurgoyf, I mean, however you pronounce it, it's actually not a bad value creature. Early on, if you can kick it, the self-mill, I know a lot of people, at least newer people, don't see it as the best thing, but self-mill and limited sometimes is really powerful, especially with recursion cards like the one I showed earlier. And the fact that into the late game, the more creatures that are in the graveyard, the bigger this guy is. For 2 mana, you could potentially have a 5/6 for 2 mana into the late game. It's a pretty strong card, period. This particular guy I got 3 of, and running this particular one, it's not the best vigilance creature for 2 mana, but at the same time, the enlist ability with certain creatures does make it pretty powerful. So it's something that I thought was pretty strong, and I got 3 of them. So it's not the worst thing that you could pick. So I decided to run with them, and then you'll see in a couple picks later that there were some creatures that were really powerful with those. Got myself a Benelish Sleeper here. This is a solid, what's the word, Fleshbag Marauder effect. Worst case scenario, it's just a 2-mana 3/1. Best case scenario, it's a 3-mana Fleshbag Marauder that can sack something crappy and potentially one of your opponent's only bombs. So not that bad of a pick. This particular creature, I feel, always gets out of hand if not answered immediately. Especially if you can turn 2, drop this, and then just keep playing dudes. I mean, worst case, not the worst I've ever done. This was only a 3/3, and even then, that forced my opponent to get rid of it right away with something else. So it was pretty strong. This card I decided to grab because of the tempo. I was aiming for a white-blue tempo-y thing, but as the game progressed, or as the picks progressed, it kind of devolved into just a mono white 5-color domain weird thing that I decided to do. And mind you, record-wise, I did not do the best. I went 1-1 in our 4-man. So out of the 2 rounds, I lost the first one, which my opponent ran a crazy red-green aggro deck. Was pretty intense, and getting mana screwed and then mana flooded, or no, I got mana flooded and then mana screwed, kind of hurts the hurts the game plan, because this is more mid-range long game. Stall for Time, I think, is a very strong white card that's definitely tempo-wise. Is super strong, especially if you can kick it for the 5 mana. It essentially locks 2 of your opponent's creatures for 3 turns? 3 turns. Because if you cast it during their turn, it locks it for their turn. The next turn, the stun tokens come off, and then the turn after that is when it comes back. So you can essentially, lock something down for 3 turns. So it's pretty strong, and it draws you a card. This card is just solid removal in white, and getting 3 of them is actually pretty insane. So, mind you, this was a 4-man pod. I know I've said it a couple times already, but the fact that you see the same cards over and over does make things a lot easier. And this one, I mean, it's a solid removal in white. 3-mana 2/2 with Enlist is not the worst, and the fact it's technically, if you look at it, because it makes a creature, this is a 3-mana 3/3, so it's actually pretty good value, and the Enlist ability is pretty strong. This particular creature I really like in Limited, just the fact it's a 3-mana 3/2, the body's okay, and it ETB Scry 2, and scrying is definitely something you always want to do when you play. This guy has always just been a strong performer in any deck I've run, and I had enough red sources with the white kicker, because I pretty much any time I played this, I always had the white kicker, so I always had essentially 5 mana for 5 power on the board, so it's very strong. This particular Garna I do enjoy a lot. It's either card advantage or just straight up damage against your opponent, and for 4 mana for a 4/3, it's pretty strong. A lot of the legends in this particular set were pretty beefy. Rada is one of the reasons I decided to go into the 5-color element there, and the fact that I had so many enlist creatures, using her effect allows you to enlist that creature and then pump it by an additional +X maximum of 5, of course, but essentially you can plus something, what's that, +8 +5, pretty ridiculous. So that's why I decided to run that. Meteorites, I got a couple Meteorites here. I got 2 Meteorites that's just decent mana fix. Yeah, it's a slower mana fix, but it does have 2 damage removal on it as well, so it's not the worst. Jodas Codex has always been personally an amazing performing card anytime I do 5 colors, and I definitely did go 5 colors this time around, so it was pretty strong. And I've always, if I see this, I typically will grab this over most other things, just because the tempo that you gain from this, potentially drawing 2 cards a turn, does change games drastically. Danitha, there's not too much to say here. This is just a strong rare card. 5 mana, 4/4 Vigilance, Lifelink, First Strike. Ridiculous. The equipment effect and aura effect is not the most relevant in Limited, but it's definitely a strong contender. And then this is another one of the cards that kind of pushed me into the 5-color domain, because technically this also is just whenever he becomes tapped, so he doesn't even have to attack. So if you enlist a creature with this, you can essentially pump the team depending on the biggest toughness, which it's not the hardest to do. And then here we got a bunch of the dual lands. So the dual lands, I feel like in this particular set, very strong. And of the 4-man, I think I was the one that grabbed the most of them. I pretty much just ran every single one of these, and then everything else in the deck was plains. So that made my deck it was actually pretty consistent. The only issue was whenever I got mana screwed or flooded, it made things very difficult. So that's why I lost whenever I did lose. And not saying, my opponent did pretty well. I mean, I'm going to give him props for the red-green aggro deck that he did build. I mean, the only thing I would have changed after looking at his deck afterwards was the fact that he only ran 15 lands. And so he was actually usually stuck on 2 lands when he really needed 3. So I'm sure that 1 extra land would have changed everything. And I do have 1 pack here to open and share with everybody. So I got this beautiful thing to open. So I want to go ahead and open this pack, see if we get anything lucky here. It is a single pack, so not the the craziest chances, but at the same time, oh yeah, and then the rares in the front, right? Yep. Oh, look at that. That is a Black Defiler of Flesh. So pretty decent. Not the worst pull, not the best pull, but still not the worst pull. And yeah, gotta say, for draft, I think I would have enjoyed this pack, either pulling that or the Jodas Codex or there's a lot of cards that I would have run for sure. And then looking at the commons, I mean, nothing super crazy overall, but they're actually, looking at it, there's some pretty decent cards like Removal, pretty decent Anti-Flyer, Card Draw, Mana, Battle Trick, Land, Fixer, Enlist Trick, Card Draw. Wow, this pack is actually pretty insane for draft. I mean, almost in every aspect there's a playable of some kind here. I don't see much that I wouldn't have played in one way or another. It's actually pretty insane. Like, probably the least pickable thing in this, for me personally, has to be the Merfolk Wizard, but that's just my playstyle. I'm not the strongest blue player. I mean, I can do it, just don't do it too often. But yeah, everything else from this pack was that's actually pretty insane. So, just a fun fact. And then, but yeah, that was one of my recent drafts, and now going forwards during my draft picks, I'll kind of go into a little bit more detail and kind of break it down as to at least my mentality as I'm picking the cards that I picked. I mean, I'm sure there's different conflicting views and certain ways other people would view the things that I picked the way that they are, but at least that's my mentality. And just to give you guys a heads up, it is now the day after my birthday, and I celebrated with my friends and family. It was a lot of fun, and my loving wife decided to surprise me with another Dominaria United booster box. So I have the joy of opening this up for you guys in another episode. I'm going to probably be doing this in the next day or so, but yeah, just to let you guys know, I got another box to rip open. And I mean, I already had one amazing birthday box. Will I get another? You guys will have to tune in and see. So thank you so much again, everyone, for sticking around to the end. Please take the time to like, share, and comment. I do have another code that I'll be sharing with this particular booster box. So at the very end of it, or maybe in the middle, we'll see. I'll decide whenever I shoot that video that I will share another arena code for you guys. And for the people that snatch those up, those are seriously my gift to you guys. I'm more than able to just load it up myself, but I've chosen, you know what, as a small thank you for anyone that does happen to take the time to watch my videos, any codes that I do have, I'll be happy to share them with you guys, and I wish you the best of luck to be the one to get it. But please take the time to like, share, comment, subscribe. It is appreciated, and thank you so much, everyone, again, for sticking around to the end. You guys have a wonderful night, and don't forget, Senpai didn't notice. Good night.